Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it might be for you. I'm here to talk about Ninja Gaiden. And I hope you're ready for me to say Ninja Gaiden a lot to the point where that phrase has no meaning. So a day or two ago, they shadow dropped Ninja Gaiden 2 Remake, much to my happiness, because Ninja Gaiden 2 is like my favorite game. On any particular day, if you were to ask me, hey, Caffeine, what's your favorite game? I would tell you either Fire Emblem 7, the original Dark Souls, or the original Ninja Gaiden 2. I'm a decent way into the remake now. I think I'm on chapter 12, so about halfway through. So we're going to talk about the differences that I've noticed between the original and the remake, and the things that I think it's done right, things I think it's done wrong. So just my initial first impressions of this remake. Before we begin, just a disclaimer to any hardcore Ninja Gaiden fans out there. The gameplay you're seeing here is on Path of the Warrior. I am not one of those people that's beating every single fucking game on Master Ninja difficulty. I'm not no hit run, fucking crazy challenge. Oh my god, I'm no diffing the game. I'm just a god gamer. I like this series a lot, but I am by no means the best guy at it. So the gameplay you're seeing here is not by any means going to be that impressive. I am still at this point in the game finding my bearings, trying to remember the controls. Really, I'm super fucking rusty, so, this isn't gonna be super impressive gameplay. It's just there for you to see, to have some nice gore for you while I talk about this shit. So first and foremost, I need to give context. The last time we got a true Ninja Gaiden game was in 2012 with Ninja Gaiden 3. So this series has been in hibernation for a pretty long time. Ninja Gaiden 3 is a fine game. I think it's alright. I think it's a perfectly fine entry into the series, but the gap in quality between it and 2 is massive. I don't even think 3 is better than Ninja Gaiden 1. I actually prefer that game. So the last time we got an update was in 2012, and it was the weakest link, I feel, in the franchise. So the last time we got true high-quality improvements into this franchise were with Ninja Gaiden 2, which released in 2008. So it's been since 2008, arguably 2012, since we got real updates for this franchise. So this update, as well as Ninja Gaiden 4 coming out, is beautiful news for people like me who have been waiting over a decade to hear anything about this series. And some context from me personally, I sold my 360 a long time ago. I ventured into PC gaming, and I sold my 360 to be able to afford to get a PC. So Ninja Gaiden 2 had not been ported to PC in its original context. There was the Sigma collection in 2021, but for reasons we'll get into, that isn't really the same game. So it's been over a decade since I've been able to really play my favorite video game in its true form. So let's talk about why I love Ninja Gaiden. What makes Ninja Gaiden so goddamn good? Well, first and foremost, it's the combat system. The three cornerstones of Ninja Gaiden's combat are fast, flashy, and gory. If you played other games in this kind of genre, like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, this'll feel probably a bit familiar to you. The main distinction I would say between Ninja Gaiden and those games, however, is that you have these little executions that you go into, the obliteration technique, and it feels a lot like Doom, where you're weaving in and out of execution animations that give you the necessary invincibility frames to find your bearings, while everyone is surrounding you trying to murder your ass. Throw in a nice variety of enemies and weapons, intuitive and responsive controls, and you got a recipe for greatness. The series has a reputation for being controller-smashingly hard, and there is some truth to that, especially around the time period this game came out. During the time, I think your average video game was not really all that difficult. But with the critical and commercial success of games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, I think difficult video games have become a lot more prevalent in the general gaming zeitgeist. But in the context of current gaming, I think this game overall is pretty challenging, but nothing too crazy. Granted, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who has already beaten the original multiple times, so I can't really give you an unbiased answer here. For me, at least, the challenging aspects of this game are actually part of the reason why I love it so much, not because I necessarily enjoy teeth-grindingly hard games, although, I've had my fair share, but because it adds to the overall power fantasy that is Ninja Gaiden. At its core, that is what this game is trying to be, a crazy, over-the-top, anime-inspired power fantasy. I think that's pretty obvious given the fact that the majority of story is told through little notes that you find that display ninja who are like, I can't do X or Y technique. And that's a technique your character casually does all the time. Or the fact that like even item descriptions refer to you as the legendary ninja Ryu Hayabusa from the dragon lineage. Like it's obviously trying to be a power fantasy. So within the context of when this game came out and its reputation as being one of the hardest games you could play and you were actually doing fucking well, made you feel like even more of a badass. Like, oh shit, I'm him. I actually beat a level in Ninja Gaiden. I kicked this game's ass. Holy shit, I'm the GOAT. Within modern contexts, I think you still get that feeling because it is still a tough game, but not to the same extent. Again, this is just from my context. To me, Ninja Gaiden now is just a tougher than average game, but I've been drenched in this game for so long that I can't really have an unbiased perspective about its difficulty. Which, for the record, all of this is to say within the context of Mentor to Acolyte mode. Any of those modes I think are tough but fair. Master Ninja, I think, is a completely other story. But to me, that doesn't really count as much. I think that a game's difficulty should be derived from the base standard way that you're going to play it. Like, when we talk about Halo, I think Legendary is really fucking hard, but we don't really judge Halo's overall difficulty on that basis. Like, yeah, Devil May Cry is really fucking hard when you put it on Dante Must Die mode. But let's move past this. Let's talk about what's actually different between this and the original. So from what I could tell, it appears that this game is a hybrid between the original Ninja Gaiden 2 and Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma. The two games have a lot of differences, although the core gameplay loop is still intact. Sigma was a much more heavily censored version of Ninja Gaiden 2, which I consider tantamount to blasphemy and sacrilege because for the time, Ninja Gaiden 2 was one of, if not the goriest game out. It wasn't just the censorship though. They also had higher HP enemies with higher resistance to limbs being removed, which is what allows you to do executions, meaning that the combat overall was a lot slower. Which I think is a death toll for a game like this. We want fast, flashy, and gory, and Sigma only really had flashy. Which, to be clear, this is all within the context of comparing it to the original. I think Sigma is actually a fine game if you have never played a Ninja Gaiden game before, but I think in comparison to the original, there's literally no comparison. The original wins every time. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I have noticed are different in the remake, and some of these might be changes that were made from Sigma. I have not played all of Sigma, so I don't know if they all come from that game. So I'm just going to go off of what I know is in this game and is different from the original. The most obvious changes that come to mind for me is that the bow has been reworked. It's a lot quicker and is, in my opinion, a lot less satisfying. Basically how it worked in the original is that you would charge up your ki and that would allow you to do a big shot that would like one-shot people if it was charged all the way. But in a game like this, it's just not feasible. It was too clunky, too un-user-friendly. They've changed it now so that when you fire a bow shot, it's just really quick. You can't charge it up at all, and it does relatively normal damage. And that's fine. It's workable, but I think it's a lot less fun. I think it is a step in the right direction, but I wish they had just made the charge time on the bow a lot quicker. I think that is the better solution. But, you know, it's better than nothing. Another change that feels like it's targeted at someone like me specifically is the item life of the, I think it's 9,000 gods? Life of the something thousand gods. The item that gives you more maximum HP. You used to be able to have that in your inventory and save it. It would regenerate your entire HP bar and give you more max HP. So it could be used as a pseudo healing item. I would stock these up because I'm a psychopath and only use them when I absolutely needed to. Now when you get them, the game makes you use them immediately and it doesn't recover any of your HP. Personally, I'm not a fan of that change, just because I believe that if I want to hoard 1,000,000 healing items and then never use them, I think that's my God-given right. Well, that's not really a problem, just a change I noticed. What is very different is they've added new weapons. Original Ninja Gaiden had a slew of weapons, some that I thought were pretty useful, others that I still struggle to find a real use for. The main additions that I've noticed is there is a weapon called Enma's Fang, which is a giant sword that I think is really cool, and it's a nice addition, but it kind of envelops the same space as the scythe. It's just a big weapon that is slower than others and does a lot of damage, and I'm not really sure what the point of it is when I have the scythe. It feels like now we have two of the same type of weapon. I mean, it's cool, it's nice, but I kind of like am scratching my head wondering why this type of weapon was given. And that's something that I think carries over from the original. You're gonna get a lot of weapons, and they're all gonna have nice variety, and you'll have your favorites, and I think for the most part they're all really fun and cool to use, but some of them I'm like, wait, why do I even have this? This feels like it doesn't really have a use. Like some of them, like the kunai and chain, the chain and sickle, I understand what I need to use them for clearing out massive waves of enemies. It has big AoE, but it doesn't do the most damage, so it should be used for enemies who have low HP, but there's a lot of them. Makes sense, has general usage. Then there's weapons like the Tonfa that are low range, not really high damage, and it doesn't seem to have any particular niche. I like the Tonfa. I think they're really fun to use. They're one of my favorite weapons, but it feels like as far as grading them objectively, it just feels like I should never be using it. But overall, I think the weapons add nice variety. I think you'll definitely find your favorites and have your own unique niche, and I think it allows you to have a little bit of personality in this game for which weapon is your favorite. Personally, I'm basic, and I'm a Falcon Talons enjoyer. And you actually do get another new weapon. It's basically a cannon. It kind of replaces the bow, for me at least, and I think it is a much better alternative to the bow. I guess the solution to the bow was to have you stop using the bow. You also get the weapons at a slightly earlier point in the story, like the Tonfa and the Flail, I think you get much earlier, but nothing that really majorly shakes things up. What is a major shakeup, however, is that you have these little side stories where you play as other characters other than Ryu. I'm pretty sure these are from the Sigma collection, although I'm not 100% certain if all of them are. And at first I was like, these aren't my favorite. They're cute little detours. I guess they add some more variety to the gameplay, and they overall sell the idea that this is a world of ninjas and Ryu is just the GOAT in a world of ninjas. But eventually, these segments start being harder than the actual game, because you're spending several chapters learning, refining, and at least for me, regaining my mastery of the combat systems. Whereas with the chapters where you're playing as other characters, the enemies are still the same enemies you've been fighting in the base game. You know, the more aggressive later stage enemies that do more damage and can take more hits. But you're locked into one play style because you're playing as the one character. So you'll be fighting against tougher enemies that can really fuck you up if you're not paying attention, and then you'll be forced to play it with a completely new gameplay style that you haven't been refining for hours of gameplay. It feels like I was studying really hard for this history test, and then all of a sudden somebody broke down the door and said, okay, fuck that, we're doing trigonometry now. I respectfully don't think I should have to put in the same amount of effort to learn the mechanics of a character. I might just be playing once to the degree that I do the character that I'm going to be playing as for the majority of the game. Or in other words, if that didn't make any sense, because that felt pretty rambly to me, if I'm only playing as a character once for a single detour, and maybe I'll play as them again later, but I doubt it since I haven't had a repeat character yet, I don't want to have to really learn their ins and outs just for one fucking chapter. That seems like really wasted effort. I think the detour should be pretty simple, nice additions of variety, but overall should be probably easier than the base game. One other problem that I think has yet to be fixed is the getting hit by shit from off screen problem. It's the number one problem that this game has. Something about Ninja Gaiden that I love, that has made me stick with it for as long as I have, is that the game feels fair. It feels like they gave me all the tools that I need to succeed in any situation, and then I have some additional tools to get me off of a bind. The base mechanics that I have of slashing, attacking, parrying, all that jazz, it feels like that's all I really need to succeed. And then if I ever do catch myself in a very tight scenario, I have magic, I have healing items, I have a bunch of additional finite resources that I can use if I'm ever in a really tight spot. And generally speaking, I think this game succeeds with that pretty well. I think most of the time that's how this game feels, but there is one big exception to this, and that's rocket launchers or just generally enemies that fire from off screen. Oftentimes, you'll be doing some sick-ass combo, and then you'll just get hit by a rocket from a million miles away that you couldn't see. This is ultimately derivative of the singular problem that sometimes the camera's a little bit wonky. It auto-adjusts to certain positions that might feel very awkward and weird to be fighting in. This is a game that 9 times out of 10, I think the camera does a pretty good job, but in certain circumstances, it fucks up. And nowhere has this felt more than with rocket launchers or just generally enemies that fire off screen. That's the biggest problem this game has overall. And not every instance of using rocket launchers is like this, just some. Like the scenario you're seeing right in front of you, I think this is fine. The rocket launchers were telegraphed for me to see, but there are plenty of other scenarios where you're just being pelted by bullshit. And to be clear, the rockets are not the only culprit of this, they're just the most obvious one. Basically any enemy that has an attack that likes to spam, that stun locks you from off screen, fuck that enemy and fuck that attack. I would have to judge every instance of this, instance by instance. Like there's a section in the jungle level that I particularly hate where you're fighting all the demons with arm cannons and they just pelt the fuck out of you. It's miserable. I hate it. I think overall it can make the game experience frustrating and unfun. I think it's the most anti-fun thing about this entire game. But if you can look past that, I think the rest of the game shines like a fucking diamond. So far, I overall think this is the best edition of Ninja Gaiden to exist. I think this is actually so far better than the original. I would highly recommend it to anyone who is either a newcomer or a classic fan of the series. I think you should all buy it, all spend your money on it. I think it's very good. Only time will tell my overall thoughts on this particular entry into the franchise, but so far I think it is well worth its purchase price. I think even for the segments that I've played, I think I've gotten my money's worth. But I'm also a man who's been actively hunting for this series to come back for over a decade, so you should take that into consideration before buying. And for those of you who may be asking, no, you don't need to play Ninja Gaiden 1 in order to enjoy Ninja Gaiden 2. The story of these games basically boils down to Ryu needs to kill some bad guys. It's pretty fucking paper thin. So yeah, these were all my initial thoughts on Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you've made it this far, I'd appreciate it if you liked and commented. It does help out. Next video is probably going to be about adaptations, or maybe it'll be about Castlevania Nocturne. We'll see. I still need to catch up on that show. Either way, I'll see you later.